How much of the Pavillon de Flore, part of the Musée du Louvre complex in Paris, can I draw in 20 minutes in a quick gestural drawing style? Well, the answer is most of it, but you'll see at the end exactly how much I drew. It took me 23 minutes in real time to draw the building, but I've sped this up 1.5 times, so it will be a little bit quicker for you to watch through. Now, gestural drawing. Why is gestural drawing different from any other drawing? Well, it's an emphasis on capturing the gesture of a subject. It's often used in describing figure drawing, capturing the gestures of the figures, rather than going into deep anatomic detail and accuracy. So I like to think of it as a technique that I use in many drawing subjects of capturing the effect of the detail rather than the exactness of the detail, rather than a complete accuracy in all things, capturing enough that our brain can interpret what's happening and, if necessary, expand it. But I think with gestural drawing, there's also the sense of speed, of a lively briskness in the way we make our marks, whether they're lines or whether they're other forms of marks. And so there's a certain amount of relaxation in a drawing, a gestural drawing, which in some way adds to its capture of the subject, even a grandiose subject, such as this part of the Louvre. So how do we draw this in a relatively short space of time? I chose 20 minutes because I thought, well, that's a sort of length of time that perhaps if you're with a travelling tourist party, that people are prepared to hang around the one place for, merely to let you do a drawing. And so how much can I capture in a brisk gestural style of this part of the Louvre complex in just 20 minutes? Now, what I've done is I've chosen to go across in a horizontal band in one section of the Louvre, and the section that is completely visible. Because what I'm thinking is, if I go across in this band, I can then go up and down reasonably quickly. So if I spend a little more time going across here with a little more accuracy, then that will pay dividends in terms of speed and still maintaining a reasonable accuracy later. Now, I was aware that there was a very slight perspective angle going down the page from left to right as the levels of the Louvre went up. If I were drawing this again, I probably wouldn't try to capture those perspective angles. I would probably just do all the lines horizontally, because they're not quite right in my drawing. And I think perspective is one of the things that even in a gestural drawing, we want to get as accurate as possible. But having gone right across, and again, not getting caught in detail, but really just trying to position the main elements, the four windows, the sculpture in the center, in the arched niche, with a sculptural, well, I haven't drawn the sculptural group above it yet. And then after that, it's really important to define the space I need to reserve for this tree before I start going into detail with the building that we can see behind the tree. And then the question is, do I go down to the ground or do I go up and complete the top part of the roof? It is annoying watching the video again as I do the voiceover and seeing that top line just sloping down slightly too much. So now I'm aligning with what I've already drawn, and what I need to do is work out where these upper floor elements sit and hope that they line up accurately enough with what I need to do at this uppermost level, and that it will work in with positioning the center decoration. this elevated arch section with the 3 windows underneath, that this will all center closely enough. And I discover, in fact, that my 4 square windows don't quite sit in the right place for what I'm wanting to do. So I just try and push them each slightly in the right direction, relying on the fact that the shading of the windows will help position them in people's minds. Because I want the rounded supports that I've just drawn in, the rounded bracketing sculptures, to sit in the right place, because they will position the decoration that the front chimney is centered on, and therefore I need that centered on the width of the building as well. And sometimes if things are out a little bit, we can adjust every opportunity to adjust slightly and just nudge various architectural elements back into a closer position. And particularly in a quick gestural drawing, if we can see ways of doing that, it's good to do. So I'm really just suggesting the barest outline of the decorations. Where there are sculptural groups, I'm really not working on doing any more than a tumble of lines that I hope will give the impression of sculptures. The scale of this drawing, plus the fact that I'm using a 2mm pen, helps me not to get a 0.2mm pen, helps me not to get too bogged down in detail. I did do a little quick mock-up to just work out whether I'd use a 0.1 or a 0.2, but the 0.1 just seemed to have too light a presence, I thought, for this. Now I don't get this curve across the top quite correct. I actually am drawing it in the opposite way I should. I've put the longer side on the closer side, which is the opposite of what it should be. So I've made a mental note to stop and just really ascertain that correctly next time. It's not the first time, I'm afraid to say. So now the larger sculptural groups, a little more effort just to suggest 2 figures, but it's really just getting the heads and the shoulders and a bit of the torso aligned. And then this chimney goes between them. Now, the height of this chimney is something that just requires a little bit more attention than a lot of the drawing at this stage, because I don't have anything to reference it from except for the proportions of what's below it. And this tall pitched mansard roofing is obviously a very important part of the architecture. It's very characteristic of the Louvre and the Second Empire period. And so it's therefore, if we're trying to capture the effect of the building, the effect of the architecture, the proportions of the roofing with its tall sculpted chimneys is part of what we really want to make sure stands out. It's a very grandiose part of the architectural effect. And so just some brisk line work there to, I think, indicate probably the shadows between the balusters rather than the actual balusters themselves. Then there are these urns positioned on the corners. And I'm starting to get a feeling that my building is a little bit too wide for the proportions of that centerpiece, which means that the roof won't sit quite on it in quite the same way. It's just a fraction wide there, but I think generally the proportions are happy enough for me. And then I need to also work out the positioning of this side chimney. Now, my building comes out more on the left of that center section than the right, which means I decide that I need to position the chimney, that left-hand chimney, closer to the urn than is in the reference if I'm going to keep the overall effect. You can see me kind of working out now where it needs to go. And that was going to be the back of the chimney. And now I realise, look, I better make that the front of the chimney, or else there'll be too much space between the chimney and the left side of that pitched roof. So sometimes we just need to make these adjustments, and because to draw it more accurately would make it, in fact, look less accurate. So we're trying to make choices that mean that the most visually prominent parts are as accurate as possible. And some parts will just be less accurate as a result of that. But if we can make those the less obvious parts that don't stand out as much, then that seems to be a happy enough trade-off. So now trying to work out just exactly where the top of this chimney goes, and I'm measuring both off the top of the roof and off the chimney that I've already drawn. So it's really just a bit slightly lower. And then this other chimney that we see on the right hand side that we just see a part of, I'm also positioning that with the tops of the three chimneys, the other two chimneys that I've already done. And just some very quick lines for some of the decorative elements on the chimney. Now we have these circular roofs. Now again, I'm going pretty quickly, but I find the certainly with 3 rows of anything, the best way to do it is to do the top row, the bottom row, and then we can position the center row so that it looks most positioned. And now there are 5 portals, little round portals along here that need to fit into the perspective angles. And then we only see 4 of the second row, and then we only see 2 of the third row. Now, trying to work out now is getting very close to full time, and trying to work out how much I'm going to do in this lower section. So this section here where we do see the entire floor, the second floor, I think we would call that in Australia. You might call it the first floor, but the floor above ground level. Get that drawn in. There's actually hedging in the front that hides the very lowest level of this part of the Louvre. And these buildings have been hedged, these trees rather have been hedged to stand above the real hedges underneath. And now I don't want to draw the side buildings, but I do just want to do a little bit of context suggestion. So I just want it to be clear that this joins more of the building, but it really is just of this pavilion. So I have passed my 20 minutes now, I'm pretty sure, and really just have the tree to go. And I'm just looking around, spotting a few details that I haven't drawn. I've never drawn the Pavilion de Flore this quickly. I have drawn it quite a few times, taking anything from a couple of hours to 6 hours. So that's probably helpful because I am familiar with the decoration. But to have to put it down so quickly certainly creates a very different sort of drawing to what I'm used to doing. And then there is this rather large amount of space with the tree. So I began to go really quickly, and then I thought, oh look, I'll just go a bit slower. I've done my 20 minutes. And then I realized though that under the tree we can see parts of the facade that do align with parts higher up, which I feel is a kind of nice thing to capture. So I just work in the couple of minutes where I go over 20 minutes on doing those. You can see me there aligning these balconies, and therefore the balcony supports with the windows that are above. And then Just trying to capture the shadows a little bit, although I've not going to have time to really do any worry about values besides some of the shading in the tree and under the balconies there, and a little bit in those first windows that I did. But I did those just as much to make it clear to me that they were the windows rather than the gaps between windows or the gaps between other architectural elements. And so that's pretty much it. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. I hope you found this interesting. I hope you give it a go. I'll put this photo on my channel community page, and look, whether you want to do a 20-minute gestural drawing or whether you want to take the opportunity to do a longer, more detailed drawing, why not have a go at it? It's a great subject and a good challenge to test our skills. But look, whatever you draw, grandiose or humble, and however you draw it, fast and gestural or considered and detailed, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.